I don't want to call this an editing tutorial. Instead, I actually want to call this a storytelling tutorial. How can we as editors uplift and increase the quality of the story? I'm Hayden and I've had 10 plus years editing professionally, as well as interviewing Hollywood editors on my podcast, The Editing Podcast. And honestly, I actually have a bit of a controversial opinion. When people talk about technical editing with me, I don't care. I honestly find that stuff really boring and distracting. Instead, I have these methods where I can use Adobe Premiere Pro to help me discover and actually find the story. And these are also methods that some of the best editors in the world are doing, whether they're editing blockbusters, TV shows, documentaries, and even YouTube content. And I actually want to share them with you because it will make you a better storyteller. So the first one is also a little bit controversial, but I actually think it's necessary, and it's called Frankenbiting. A lot of times in interviews or podcasts, documentaries, the talent can often just go through many different. It could be quite common for the talent to not quite nail the point they wanted to make. And it's your responsibility as an editor to help them do that. So if a talent started off with a sentence like this:
do you want to niche down and become an expert in a specific style of editing, or would you prefer to become a jack of all trades editor?
But it didn't conclude the point. But let's just say 5 minutes later in the interview, you get this sentence.
I would say it kind of depends on your priority.
That is a completely unrelated sentence on a completely different subject, but it doesn't matter. You're there for the talent. Help them tell their story. So grab that sentence, move it along here, have it right next to them.
Do you want to niche down and become an expert in a specific style of editing, or would you prefer to become a jack of all trades editor? I would say it kind of depends on your priority.
And then here is the really cheeky part. You don't use Adobe's text-based editing and search for conjunctions. Find a bunch of ands, find a bunch of howevers, find a bunch of buts. Words that you use to connect statements, you will have an arsenal of them. So experiment with which one helps fit those two sentences together.
Or would you prefer to become a jack of all trades editor? And I would say it kind of depends on your priority.
Essentially, yes, you've given this person a sentence they technically never said, but you are supporting them and clarifying their point. You're using editing to help the talent tell their information better. Now, obviously, that does make it a little bit more jump cutty, and so we have to cover our tracks. And the obvious way is with B-roll and even reaction shots. And that is also quite tedious to be finding. And if you're clever, you'll be using Premiere to set you up for success, especially if you're using their labeling tools. For instance, in this really long interview that's like 2+ hours long, I'm gonna make subclips. Set your ins and outs in the source and then hit Command U to make a subclip. You can then label that subclip to be anything. But I like to name mine the names of the people on screen and in the shot type. For example, I have made a collection of reaction shots. Jordan reaction shot nodding 1. Jordan reaction shot nodding 2. Jordan reaction shot thinking 1. I have then created this collection so that when I then make the Frankenbite, I could potentially put one of these on top.
Or would you prefer to become a jack of all trades editor? And I would say it kind of depends on your priority.
And because I've labeled these clips, they are now searchable. I can just search reaction shots and I can see my entire list right there. Done. And then I'm also labeling it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because I've genuinely done this before where I probably use the same reaction shot 3 times in 1 minute and people noticed. So use 1, 2, and 3 to make sure you don't use it again or for a while. I actually think Adobe's labeling features are really underrated, especially we can use them in these sneaky ways. When I was editing a narrative, I started having this real big struggle with pacing, and I couldn't quite figure out why a movie felt like it was slowing down. So instead of watching it over and over again trying to find the issue, Premiere was able to help me see the entire movie from a macro scale. So on this draft of the movie, I labeled each different scene with a completely different color. And once I had them all in a different color, I zoomed out, and I could genuinely see the rhythm of the movie. I could see where some scenes were really short, I could see where some scenes looked right, but then there was this one scene right here. It clearly was out of place with the peaks and valleys of the movie. And then I went in, trimmed down that scene, and I was able to match it with the entire rhythm of the movie. This was the easiest way for me to discover the pacing issues. On top of this, color labeling is also a really good way to balance screen time. Especially if there's 3 or 4 contestants in some game show or reality show, you can give each of those talents their own color label. And then after your first draft or second draft or whatever, you could zoom out and see on a macro scale whether they have balanced screen time. The third thing I could do with the color labeling, again, I just love the color labeling, it's such a simple technique. When I'm in the thick of it of editing, my organization genuinely is terrible. Especially when I'm doing music and sound effects and then mixing it all all up with the dialogue. So when I am cutting, I do make sure that each of those sound genres basically have their own unique color label. Otherwise, all of those sounds all mixed together, you can't see what's what. And then once I've actually done the creative, then I'll spend the time tidying up. And because I've labeled them all different colors, that tidying up is really easy. Genuinely, I just put on a podcast and I can just drag them all into their right tracks. It's actually a really nice way to take a break. So here's me really overhyping, but actually a love letter to simple color labeling in Adobe Premiere Pro. If you take these preemptive steps using Adobe Premiere's techniques, this helps organize your chaos. So let Premiere Pro just help you with your creative chaos.